Welcome to the lecture on exploring regional integration and value chain analyzer, in short what we call RIVA for policy analysis. The objective of this lecture is to familiarize the user and help them in their understanding of this online resource. Here we'll cover the following issues. First, we'll discuss the existing available databases for extraction of value addition. Then we'll provide the basic features of RIVA database, its coverage and usage. Detailed analysis using different aspects of RIVA databases will be done, considering a few countries as examples, in which we will explain GVC relationships, structure of value added, participation in GVCs, backward and forward linkages, and other policy questions through data. Trade in value added can be estimated using inter-country input-output tables. There are already few publicly available databases which are used extensively. For example, UNCTAD EURA database, OECD TIVA database. Apart from that, World Input-Output table published by a consortium of 11 institutions based on national supply use tables can also be used. RIVA Value Chain Advisor, published by ESCAP and FIALAC, covering 72 economies and 38 sectors based on Asian Development Bank's multi-regional input-output tables. As mentioned, RIVA is developed by Trade and Investment and Innovation Division of ESCAP in collaborations with Asian Development Bank and Economic Commissions for Latin America and the Caribbean, Economic Commissions for Africa, and Forum for East Asia Latin America Cooperation. RIVA database covers 71 individual economies and 2 economic clusters and 38 sectors. It has a very user-friendly interface, a better visualization. It also helps the user to have a deep dive into the analysis of GVC indicators for products as well as for trading partners. There is an emphasis on conceptualization of policy questions while extracting the data. This is also convenient for cross-country analysis and benchmarking. Overall, it gives basically a relationship, helps actually the user to have an understanding about the relationship among countries, region, and sectors based on global value chain. This slide shows how to extract the list of sectors. The sectors have their own IDs, and then there are long names and the short names, and the categories are also given. For example, manufacturing low tech includes many products, which includes food and beverages, textiles, leather and footwear, etc. Countries can be extracted using the URL given on the slide. RIVA also provides another aspect, which is basically to create economic groups. Some of the groups are already been listed in the database itself. For example, APEC, APTA, Asia Pacific, etc. GVC relationships are given on the first page of the RIVA site. So in this case, we need to identify the exporting country and the year. For example, we have selected Nepal as the country and 2017 as the year. GVC relationship provides the overview of the selected country. In our example case, it is Nepal for the year 2017. So GVC relationship is divided into two parts: backward linkages, that is how much is Nepal's foreign imports being used in its exports, and the forward linkages, that is the domestic production by Nepal, which is being used by the importing countries in their exports. And in this case, both backward and the forward linkages is around 15%. GVC relationship can be further provided by the exporting sector. So in this slide, we can see the forward linkages and the backward linkages. The top 5 exporting sectors have been identified. Once we click on those sectors, we'll be able to find out the major countries who are contributing to this sector, especially for the backward linkages, and for forward linkages, which are the countries which are using the Nepal's exports as intermediate commodities for their own exports. The same thing can be explained by the partner countries also. So here the backward and forward linkages are shown in terms of partner countries, and you can see that Singapore is contributing only 0.33% and India is contributing around 6.3% in Nepal's backward linkages. That means these countries are contributing to Nepal's exports. And once we click on the country, we get the list of sectors which are playing an important role in Nepal's exports, as well as list of sectors once we click on the forward linkages. For example, if we click on China, how China is using Nepal's exports in its own exports as intermediate goods. Let us now concentrate on structure of value added. In this case, we have considered Nepal's exports to Bangladesh. So Nepal's gross exports to Bangladesh can be divided into 6 parts, which are given here. So domestic value added in exports directly consumed by the importer, which are divided into 2 parts. One is 1.1 and 1.2. So either it is an intermediate domestic production or the final domestic production. Domestic value added in exports used for the productions of further exports, which is just like forward linkages. So this is divided into 2 parts. One is consumed by the initial exporter and another one consumed by the economies other than the initial exporter. So 1.3 is basically coming back. So Nepal's exports going to Bangladesh and coming back to Nepal once again. Foreign value added, a foreign production used in exports consumed by the importer is like a foreign value added. So what is the contribution of foreign countries in Nepal's exports to Bangladesh, which is basically 1.5. And then there is 1.6, which is double counted, because in global value chain, goods are crossing the border multiple times, so there is a possibility of double counting. So let us now try to understand the structure of value added of Nepal's exports to Bangladesh into these 6 components. So you can see the double counting part is only 1.68%. And the share of produced abroad and used in Nepal's exports to Bangladesh, which is around 10.92%, which is basically the backward linkages. And then share of production in Nepal consumed by Bangladesh in its exports, which is like a forward linkages, which is around 13.45%. So it clearly says now that Nepal is having around 24% of its GVC participation with Bangladesh. Now if we do it with India, and then we can see the share of intermediate output produced in Nepal and consumed in India is around 52.92%. So what is Nepal's production of intermediate goods which go to India for final consumption? As intermediate goods which are being used in India and produced in India some goods, so which is around 52.92%. And share of final output produced in Nepal and goes to India is around 18.96%. So 52% goes as intermediate good and 18.96% goes as final output. And then share of production in Nepal which is consumed by India in its export, which is around 7.34%, and share of produced abroad and used in Nepal's exports is around Nepal exports to India is around 17.70. So Nepal is using 17.70% of foreign inputs in its exports to India, and India is using further the Nepal's exports as inputs for further exporting, which is around 7.34%. So if we look at Nepal's exports to select Asian countries, so we have considered China, Republic of Korea, Japan and Thailand, then we can find out that share of production in Nepal and consumed by China, Republic of Korea, Japan and Thailand are quite high. So you can see that share of production in Nepal and consumed in Thailand in its exporting is around 35.98%. So forward linkages are quite high. On the other hand, if you look at share of the produced abroad and used in Nepal's own exports to different countries, for example, this is basically the backward linkages. For China, it is around 17.36%. And the goods which are being exported by Nepal, more than 60% are actually being consumed by those countries, as we can see it here, summing these two components. If we pick up a specific product, for example, Nepal's exports of textile products to India, and the same numbers, as you can see, the share of production in Nepal consumed by India in its exports is around 9.32%. So India is considering these imports as imported inputs in its own exports, and the share of produced abroad and used in Nepal's exports to India is around 23.96%. So it is basically the backward linkage, and 9.32% is a forward linkage. Now, in another example, we made an attempt to understand the close relationship between Southeast Asia and East Asian countries like Japan and Republic of Korea. and you can see that the double counting is quite high. For example, 12% and 18.79%. So these are basically of goods crossing the border several times, and as a result, there is a possibility of double counting. We can also see the participation of these countries with their global value chain. I mean, global value chain participation with Japan and Korea are quite high. So you can see 29.82%, 12.79%. Together, if we sum it, so you can understand it is more than 40% with Japan, and also more than 47% with Korea. Now let's go to the third component, which is participation in GVC. So we are considering now Nepal and India, and we can highlight how much is Nepal's exports of all sectors going to India are GVC related compared across South and Southeast Asian economies. So you can see that the foreign production used by Nepal in exporting to South and Southeast Asian economies is the maximum. So that's basically the green color. So if we speak up a particular sector, for example, in this example, we have picked up textile as a sector. So you can find that besides Nepal GVC relationship with India, the breakdown of Nepal's exports of textile and textile products to other South and Southeast Asia are explained, and you can see again the foreign production consumed by the importer is highest. So in another example, we can now pick up not a single country, rather a group of economies. The group of economies are listed already in the list of countries. Some of the groups are pre-specified. RIVA site also provides an opportunity to create own country groups. So that can be done clicking on download data. And here we have selected Asia Pacific economy as the exporting countries and Southeast Asia as the importing economy, so that we can understand how close the Asia Pacific countries are integrated with each other. So you can see that the domestic production used in the importers' exports, which is significantly high in case of Russia, and in case of the foreign production consumed by the importer is significantly high. And also you must note that double countings are quite high in several cases. For example, with Singapore, with Taiwan provinces of China, with Republic of Korea. So Asia Pacific economies are having a close integration with these countries. So there is a lot of products crossing the border multiple times. So now let us concentrate on backward and forward linkages. So backward linkages means the source economy which are exporting to Nepal. For example, in this case, we are trying to understand Nepal's exports to India, the textile products. What are the contribution of other countries who are exporting to Nepal, and Nepal is using those imports as inputs and produce the product and export to India. So one thing is very clear, that Nepal's exports are significantly being backed up by Asian countries, which are basically explained in this diagram through blue part. So the share of India and China at the maximum. India is contributing 45.65% and China is contributing 14.49%. So in backward linkage, as we can say that these two countries in Asia Pacific are significantly contributing in Nepal's exports of textile products. So it is raw materials which are coming from India, processed in Nepal, and then it is going back to India. So let's now concentrate on forward linkages. Forward linkages means here, where does Nepal contribute towards the export production of other countries? So here the exporting country is Nepal. The product we have selected is textile and textile products. It goes to other countries. So other countries are importing from Nepal, and then they are processing it and exporting to third countries, which can be back to Nepal as well. So here in Nepal's forward linkages, the contribution of Turkey is significantly high, which is around 26%, followed by Nepal and Singapore, followed by India and Singapore, 17% and 15% respectively. So Nepal's exports are being used as imported inputs by Asian countries maximum, as you can see it from the blue part of this diagram. Let us now concentrate on other aspects. So one of the most important thing here that in this side you can create country groups. So once I click on download data, so there actually you can create a country group. So so that basically highlight one of the major features of global. So this slide shows how to create own economy group. Further, we can download the data. So this slide shows the Nepal's exports of textile and textile product to India, and what are the different sources. So the column A actually explains the sources. How much is the export of those countries which are contributing to Nepal's exports to India. So RIVA database actually provide us a tool by which actually we can gauge the state of GVC integration of a country with other countries, both at the aggregate level and at the sector level. These information can help the countries to identify the need of enabling trade policy tools, technology transfer, skill requirements for specific sectors. Because when a country is able to observe that their participation in global value chain, both at backward and forward, are increasing, they may need it to accentuate it through certain policy stances, and the data actually helps to identify which are the sectors in which GVCs are growing. Similarly, several domestic policies such as infrastructure development, specific promotion schemes of SMEs which are part of a GVC, so we can identify the sectors. So what are the SMEs in those sectors and what kind of support they needed could be included in the policy policy strategy. In-depth information such as sources of intermediate inputs, destinations of domestic value added by comprehensive data extractions are very useful, because this can help us to understand the involvement of trade in the development of particular sector. Finally, RIVA is basically the most appealing features of RIVA is its very simplified structure, and the visualization are great, which can help policymakers to have a better introspection. Thank you very much.